Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to today's live stream program, Streamable Learning and the Museum of the Rockies. I'm Jamie Augst, the museum's Outreach Program Manager, and with us today is Scott Williams, the Museum of the Rockies Paleontology Lab and Field Specialist. Hi, Scott.
Hi, how's everybody doing?
In just a minute, Scott will introduce us to the Museum of the Rockies Paleontology All-Stars, the museum's most notable paleontology collections. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited. Like most of you, we're at our homes today. Because the museum is closed, we're excited to share these amazing specimens with you via PowerPoints and from our house. Before we get started, let's talk about two features that Zoom has. The first one is the chat box, which I think you've all practiced using by typing in your name, your grade, and where you're from. Thanks for doing that. The second is the Q&A area. If you have any questions for us, type those in there. We will do our absolute best to get to as many of those as possible. We have found that you guys have so many great questions that it's really hard for us to get to all of them. So bear with us. And if we don't get to your question, I challenge you to try to find the answer yourself when this is all over. So like I said, Scott may ask you a few questions throughout the program. If you have an answer, type it in the chat box. I will read as many as I can out loud. Thanks again for joining us. We're excited to spend the next 30 to 40 minutes with you. And hopefully we'll have time for questions again at the end. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Scott as he tells us where we're broadcasting from and introduces us to those all-stars. Thanks, Scott. Take it away.
Thanks, Jamie. Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Williams. I'm the Paleontology Lab and Field Specialist for Museum of the Rockies. And we're going to dive right in and kind of go on a virtual tour of the museum exhibits. We're going to see a lot of cool specimens. First off, the question is going to be, where are we at? And hang on one sec. Trying to advance my slide here and it's not happening. Let's see. There we go. All right, well, Museum of the Rockies, we're located in basically southwest part of Montana. Here you can see a map of the United States. The red dot is where we're at. If we zoom in a little bit closer, you can see, and I'll move my cursor down here. You can see here's Yellowstone National Park right here in the corner of Wyoming and Montana. We're about an hour and a half northwest of there. And outside of our museum is a very familiar looking specimen. Can someone type in the chat box what they think this dinosaur is?
T-Rex, 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 T-Rex. Big Mike, all right.
Yeah, somebody got Big Mike. Nice, nice. Yes, it's Big Mike the T-Rex, and you guys all get a big roar from our Jurassic Park T-Rex. Good job, everybody. A little bit about me. You don't have to read all this stuff, but I've been around the block a few times. I've been about 20 years of doing paleontology field work. I've worked in numerous states, including Utah, Wyoming, New Mexico, Montana, lots of time in Montana. And so I get around a bit in the paleontology world, collect a lot of specimens, hundreds of dinosaurs, thousands of individual fossils over the years. And so I'm going to be your guide through the Dinosaur Complex, the Siebel Dinosaur Complex at Museum of the Rockies. And here's our train of dinosaurs getting ready to go into the exhibit halls. One of the things I think hopefully you'll all come out understanding, at least a little bit, is that not all dinosaurs lived at the same time. So here you have a nice couple of illustrations of a Tyrannosaurus Rex and one of the big long neck dinosaurs, Diplodocus. T-Rex lived 66 to 67 million years ago at the very end of the age of the dinosaurs. So right before they go extinct. And Diplodocus lived 147 to 150 million years ago. So you can see they're separated by, about 80 million years of time. In fact, you are closer in time to T-Rex than Tyrannosaurus Rex was to Diplodocus. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how long dinosaurs were around. This is a big kind of imposing chart, but this is geologic time scale. This is how we, basically kind of map where these animals are in time. And I'm going to take my cursor. Here's my cursor, right? And I just said that Diplodocus lived around 150 million years ago. So here's where Diplodocus was, right here. And then T-Rex was all the way over here, about 67 million years ago. So all this time from here, whoop, all the way over to here is what separates Diplodocus and T-Rex. So in our paleo exhibits, as I said, we're in the Siebel Dinosaur Complex. We have several main halls: the Hall of Giants, the Hall of Growth and Behavior, Hall of Horns and Teeth, and the Cenozoic Corridor. The Hall of Giants is a hall, aptly put, that has a lot of big dinosaurs in it. Here's a couple pictures, and we'll get into the individual pictures here in a second. But a good portion of the hall involves the Jurassic period. We just mentioned that Diplodocus is from the late Jurassic. If we go back in time and take a look at North America 150 million years ago, right towards the end of the Jurassic period, we can see that it looks really different. You can see a western or a seaway here in the northwest that it's crept in. It's called the Sundance Sea, and it actually kind of covers parts of Montana and down into Wyoming. And there's all these big rivers that are basically draining into it. Lots of the United States and Canada are kind of covered with these seaways, so it looks quite a bit different. This over here is actually part of Europe and Africa. That's how close we are to the other continents right now. During that time, here in North America, one of the most common dinosaurs were the long-necked dinosaurs. Those are called sauropods. They're found in what's called the Morrison Formation. It's a geologic formation that we see in Wyoming and Utah and Colorado and here even in Montana and all the way down to New Mexico. They're the most common of the dinosaurs at that time, 150 million years ago, and they're known for their very long necks, their giant bodies, and their long tails. They include the largest land animals that ever lived. Some species could grow well over 100 feet long and more than 50 tons. There's even a couple species of these long-necked dinosaurs in South America that were about 120 feet long and weighed about 80 to 100 tons. So they are literally the largest things that ever walked on land. Here we have a specimen here in our hall. It is a juvenile Diplodocus. So again, one of the long-necked dinosaurs. You can see its peg-like teeth for stripping pine needles and pine cones and things like that off of trees. And over here we have a rib to one of our big long-necked dinosaurs, the Apatosaurus. That is a chest rib. So everyone, you just grab your ribs, on your chest, and you can feel how big they are. Here's one that is about 9 feet tall, and this is our collections manager, Amy Atwater, and she's about 6 feet tall. So that gives you an idea. She's about 6 feet to right here, and that's another 3 feet on top, and that's just one rib. So that should show you how big sauropods are. Here's an illustration of a Diplodocus. Again, Diplodocus is one of the longer of the long-necked dinosaurs. It's an animal that could get to be 90 to 100 feet long, weigh around 15 tons. So that's like, 3 elephants. So it's a real big animal. The other really cool dinosaur in our Hall of Giants is probably a familiar face to you dinosaur fans out here. It is an Allosaurus. It's Allosaurus jamadsoni. That's the species name. Here's its skull. Again, you can see my cursor. Here's where the eye would be. This was a fleet-footed predatory dinosaur. Here's all those nice sharp teeth there, curved back. Here's where its nostril would be. Here's the cast skeleton, which as you come into the hall and look up, any of you come to visit Museum of Rockies, you come in this hall, look up, and Big Al's right over top of you. Big Al was actually found in 1991, so nearly 30 years ago in Wyoming in the Morrison Formation, and it was one of the most complete allosaurs ever found. We learned a lot from Big Al, including that dinosaurs had a real rough life. If you take a look over here, follow my cursor, here it is. This is one of Big Al's feet. I think it's the right foot. And right here we have one of the toe bones. Look at that big, massive growth here. That should be nice, smooth bone like the other toe bones, but it had this massive infection. It injured its toe at some point. It got infected, and the infection actually went up its foot. And if you look at other parts of the skeleton, you can see broken and healed ribs. Being at the top of the food chain was tough. It was a tough life. And so we see evidence of injuries that have healed. So it wasn't, easy street for all the big meat-eating dinosaurs at the time. There's several species of Allosaurus. Allosaurus gematsoni is one of the species. And here you can see, again, here's some man and a woman in comparison to the different Allosaurs that lived at the time. They possibly hunted in packs. They also scavenged. We have tooth marks on dinosaur bones that belong to, the tooth marks belong to Allosaurus. So it's definitely, it's considered kind of the tiger of the Jurassic. So definitely something you wouldn't want to just run into. We're gonna jump ahead in time a little bit because we're gonna go into a new hall. This is gonna be the Hall of Growth and Behavior. So we've just gone from 150 million years ago to about 76 million years ago. You can see those continents that were very close here have kind of got pushed further away. There's a new seaway which basically goes right through the center of North America here. It actually kind of segues off here. So here is Montana. This is Montana here. So Montana was half underwater. And here's the state of Iowa, the center there. And all the way, at one point, this seaway went all the way over to Utah, which was like 1,000 miles wide. So it was a very big seaway. You had dinosaurs living on both sides, like over here and over here. And then you had large marine reptiles and sharks. And giant fish in the seaway itself. The Hall of Growth and Behavior has several different species of dinosaurs. This is just a sneak peek of what we're about to talk about. And as the name of the hall implies, we're going to talk about baby dinosaurs a bit here. One of the first dinosaurs you'll see when you come into the Hall of Growth and Behavior is this subadult or quote unquote teenage Ankylosaurus. Ankylosaurus is a type of horned dinosaur. So it's related to Triceratops, the one everyone remembers, but lived about 10 million years before Triceratops. And if you notice, it doesn't have a big horn on its nose or over its eyes. It has these really rugose, bumpy, gnarly, bony bosses over both the nose and the eyes. And it's thought that there would be keratin, basically the stuff that makes up your fingernails, over this, so that you'd have these weird kind of knobs. It has two very prominent spikes off the back of its head shield, off of its frill. And so this shows that not all of our horned dinosaurs had horns. It was found in the northwestern part of Montana, lived 74 to 75 million years ago. It was found in a bone bed of other ankylosaurs, so juveniles, subadults, and adults. So basically kids through adults were all found in one bone bed. And that tells us that it likely lived in herds. The other dinosaur you're going to see, which is a famous dinosaur, is Maiasaura. And can anyone tell me why Maiasaura is very important to Montana? Just type that in your chat box if you know why Maiasaura is important to the state of Montana. We'll see if we have any winners here.
Go ahead, type your best guess in there. Got a smart group today, Scott. They said it's Montana's state dinosaur.
Yep.
It was first found in Montana.
Those
Uh,
are all correct. I saw those. It is the state dinosaur of Montana, found here in Montana. It was described here. And here you can see a little baby, basically just out of the egg, a slightly bigger specimen, and then here's a skull of a big adult. It's known as the good mother dinosaur. It's a member of the duck-billed dinosaur group. Lived around 76 million years ago. First discovered in 1978. So, like, 40 years ago. I hate to admit that I was around at that time. I remember as a young kid hearing about Maiasaura. And we have babies to adults. We also have eggs for Maiasaura. It likely cared for its young, which is why it is given the name good mother dinosaur. And it had a very fast metabolism. Most dinosaurs grew up very quickly. So it literally went from a little baby dinosaur about this big, less than about a little over a foot long, to an adult that's over 20 feet long in like 10 years. That's a very fast growth spurt. So a little thing like this that weighed a few pounds to an animal that weighed a few tons in 10 years. So this kind of one of the many things that shows us that dinosaurs aren't like lizards or crocodiles and stuff like that. They have a much different metabolism. They grow different. They grow more like a mammal or a bird. All right, we have different dinosaur eggs here in the left-hand corner. We have Troodon at an actual nest site. These are a bunch of eggs in here. You can see all of these eggs are kind of at an angle. They were laid 2 by 2 to a dinosaur Troodon, which is kind of a relative of the raptor. Down here we have big kind of flattened eggs to a Lambeosaur, which is one of the duck-bill dinosaurs. And over here we have some more Maiasaura eggs. So what's cool is that this gives us good information from the minute they're in the egg. Sometimes we even find little embryos in the eggs. We find little babies that unfortunately died in their eggs, but then we can study them from the point they're in their egg, the point they hatch from their egg, all the way up to when they're an adult. So it tells us more about their biology, their life history, which is important. We have other duck-billed dinosaurs. These are a couple duck-billed dinosaurs that you'll find in the Hall of Growth and Behavior. This dinosaur here is a duck-billed dinosaur called Brachylophosaurus. Lived around 75 million years ago. And again, was a plant-eating dinosaur. You can't see too well here, but the teeth on these are built for grinding and chewing. They're one of the few dinosaurs that could chew. And they grew to 25 to 30 feet long, weighed a couple of tons, and probably traveled in herds as well. Now, below it is another type of duck-billed dinosaur, but you can see that it's different. It looks different than this because it has a bony crest. It's called Hypacrosaurus. It's also a duck-bill plant-eating dinosaur, but it has this big crest. And so you have two groups of horned dinosaurs, or no, sorry, horned dinosaurs, hadrosaurs, the duck-billed dinosaurs, the ones that had crests, like Hypacrosaurus, and the ones that didn't. Hypacrosaurus also lived around 75 to 76 million years ago, grew to be about 30 feet long, and probably traveled in herds. We have bone beds of Hypacrosauruses. Well, what was eating those duckbills at that time, 75 to 76 million years ago? Well, this is a skull, also in the same hall, of a Daspletosaurus. And Daspletosaurus is a type of tyrannosaur. So it's part of the family of tyrannosaurs, which includes Tyrannosaurus rex. But Daspletosaurus lived about 10 million years before T-Rex. Grew to be about 30 feet long, weighed about 3 tons, had a big, strong skull, and those teeth that you see here are about, 2-3 inches long. Some of them are even 4 inches long. So it had strong, sharp teeth for slashing and biting, and it definitely would have hunted and preyed upon, and also scavenged those duckbill dinosaurs we just looked at. In fact, we actually have those duckbill bones that have tooth marks on it from Daspletosaur. So we know that those duckbills were a favorite meal of our friend here, the Daspletosaurus. Well, what about the raptors? I'm sure somebody by now has said, what about the raptors? And we're going to get to those here right now. Here's our friends from Jurassic Park zooming by. We have raptors at Museum of the Rockies. On the left, we have part of a raptor called Deinonychus. Fun fact, velociraptors, there are no velociraptors at all found in North America. Velociraptors are a type of raptor that was found in Mongolia, so on the other side of the planet. We do have relatives of Velociraptor. Deinonychus and Sornitholestes are a couple examples. Deinonychus lived about 110 million years ago and was human-sized, got to be about 5 feet tall, about 8 feet long, was built, again, for speed. You can see here's the so-called killing claw on the foot, had very sharp curved claws on its hands as well. And here we have Sornitholestes. This lived at the same time as Daspletosaurus and those other duckbills. And again, you can see it's built for grabbing and holding on and biting. And it has that really pronounced killing claw right here. So you definitely want to run into a few of these because they would not be very friendly probably. So what did it look like 75 million years ago? This is a artist reconstruction of Julius Chetney. Here's a Daspletosaur looking at some horned dinosaurs. Here's our friends, the Brachylophosaurs, and we even had armored dinosaurs back then. So these are armored dinosaurs related to the big Ankylosaurus that we know about. And there would have been raptors and crocodiles and turtles and birds and pterosaurs. And this is what like Montana looked like 75 million years ago. Now remember, there was a big seaway which went right through the center of North America. There in the seas there was swimming reptiles, aquatic reptiles. These are not dinosaurs. This is called Edgarosaurus. It's a type of plesiosaur, so kind of the long-necked, flippered marine reptiles. You can see it has really sharp teeth that like overlap, that literally do this when it closes its mouth. So it would have been a really good fish eater. And you can see that its hands and feet have evolved into paddles. So it doesn't have fingers that can do this kind of stuff. It has these paddles which are great for swimming. You can see right here, right? Again, not a dinosaur, a type of reptile though. And then even bigger and scarier were the big mosasaurs. These were the big marine seagoing reptiles. Some of them grew over 40 feet long. And they lived in that seaway around 74 million years ago. Again, they're not a dinosaur. They are related to lizards and snakes. They're actually related to things like the Komodo dragons. So when you try to visualize a big mosasaur swimming along, imagine a 40-foot long Komodo dragon just swimming along, and you've got a pretty good idea of what it would have been like. Again, they have really sharp teeth. They ate whatever they could eat. They were what we call apex predators. They're at the top of the food chain. So they would have eaten sharks and ammonites, other mosasaurs. They probably would have eaten our plesiosaur friends. So these things, again, you wouldn't want to jump out of your canoe or your boat if you were paddling along in the western interior seaway. Well, we're going to move ahead 10 million years to the very end of the age of dinosaurs. This is the latest Cretaceous, and this is our Hall of Horns and Teeth. So this is our specimens that are mostly found from what's called the Hell Creek Formation, which is found all over eastern Montana, dates between 66 and 67 million years ago. If we, again, take a look at our prehistoric maps here, basically, this is North America 66 million years ago. Look, there's no Florida. Florida is underwater. We still have a little bit of a seaway left, not a lot, but eastern Montana is coastal. So it was warm and wet and tropical. Again, you had crocodiles and alligator-like crocs, turtles, even freshwater stingrays that were hanging around. So it's much warmer and wetter. One of the familiar dinosaurs that you'll see if you come in the hall is a Monosaurus. This is a skull of a very large Monosaurus. It is one of the duckbill dinosaurs, so it's distantly related to things like Maiasaura and Brachylophosaur and Hipparchosaur. You can see it does not have a crest. There's no crest, so it's a crestless duckbill dinosaur. You can see it's got the kind of flattened bill up front, and here you got a better view of the teeth. These teeth right here are built for grinding and chewing, and they're constantly replacing. Unlike us, we have our 2 sets, right? When you lose your baby teeth, you got 1 more set and then you're done, and then it's dentures time, right? Dinosaurs didn't have to worry about that. If the tooth came out, there was another one coming right back in underneath it. And Monosaurus was the largest of the, right here in North America, the largest of the duckbill dinosaurs. Could grow up to 40 feet long and weigh over 4 tons. Again, probably lived in herds and probably was a favorite food of our friend Tyrannosaurus Rex. Here's a reconstruction of the Monosaurus. Our next dinosaur, which you're going to see as soon as you walk into the right, is our friend Triceratops. Again, probably one of the most popular and recognizable dinosaurs. And I'm drinking out of a Jurassic Park cup from McDonald's. Here you can see Dr. Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler with a Triceratops. This cup is from 1993. That tells you how old this cup is. It also tells you how old I am. But again, it's a famous dinosaur that gets its own cup. And what you're seeing here is a growth series of Triceratops. This is a juvenile Triceratops. And as they grow up, you can see that their horns change shape. They curve back, and then they start curving forward. And they have these little spikes, these little frills on their frill. As they get older, those start to round out and disappear. So we call this change from this little specimen here up to these big ones ontogeny. When you grow up, as you become adults, and you go through your changes and you lose your teeth and things like that, that's ontogeny. That is that's a scientific word for basically change through growth. We're going to zoom in. Here is a little baby. This one is a little baby Triceratops skull. It's probably less than a few years old, probably less than a year old. And you can see it has tiny little nub horns. And then next to it is this Triceratops here. The horns have gotten bigger. And here we are again, getting slightly bigger. So these are juveniles. They're, we don't know exactly how old they are. We're working on that, but this would be basically adolescent Triceratops, probably the age of many of you out there.
Scott, are all those bones real?
These are reconstructions of real specimens. So these are molds and casts made, so they're identical, 1-to-1 exact replicas. We have the real skulls in our collection, so when scientists and researchers come, we can hand them the real bone and they can look at it. But they are all made from real specimens. It would be kind of dangerous for us to try and display these skulls because now we're getting into these bigger ones that are 5, 6, 9 feet long, and they weigh a lot and they can fall apart very easily.
One more question. Do Triceratops have horns when they hatch?
That's a great question. We don't know the answer to that because we have not found a Triceratops nest site like we have for other dinosaurs, and we have not found a Triceratops that's right out of the egg. The smallest Triceratops we have is this little one right here, and the whole skull is about this big. So, basically a little bit about the same size as my head. And So we don't have anything younger or smaller than that yet.
And remind us before we move on why some are pointing forward and some are pointing back.
So these ones here, you see how they curve backwards? Those are that means they are juveniles, and as they grow older, the horn changes shape and starts to move forward and curve forward. It's a way for adults and juveniles to tell each other apart, if that makes sense. Like these here are teenagers, more or less. We call them subadults. The horns are not curving back as much. They're starting to curve forward. You can see right here, it's starting to round here, and then we get to this. We get to the big adults, where the horns curve forward. Those little pointy triangles, those frilly frills on the back have been absorbed back into the skull. And then you get real large skulls like this one here. That's like almost 9 feet long. And that's a big, old, adult Triceratops. And they were the largest of the horned dinosaurs. They could get to be over 30 feet long, weighed about 6 tons, probably lived in small groups. And those horns and frills were probably for display, not for, a lot of people still think that they were for fighting and jousting and defense. Their original purpose is probably for display because, again, remember a few slides ago, we had a horned dinosaur that didn't even have horns. So this was a display mechanism.
Did they lose their horns like elk or deer?
Nope. This is bone. This
Okay.
is a bony core that would have a sheath of keratin. It would have keratin like my fingernails. Think of like a bison horn. A bison have a bony horn that comes off their skull, and when they're living, they have a sheath of keratin on the outside of it. So they don't shed these. Both males and females have them as well.
And those holes, can you tell us a little bit about those holes?
So that's something that our paleontologist, John Scannell, is working on. Those holes appear to be formed as the animal gets really old. This part of the head shield right here starts to thin. And the idea is that the bone here, the minerals that make up the bone, are taken from here and basically redeposited on these horns, which is how they're able to change their shape and start to point forward.
Thank you.
Sure. And now we're on to probably everyone's favorite dinosaur, or most everyone's favorite dinosaur, Tyrannosaurus rex. T-Rex is one of the largest of the median dinosaurs that ever lived. Grew to be over 40 feet long, 14 feet tall at the hips, and weighed over 8 tons. Had the strongest bite of any animal that ever existed ever, that we know of. Over 8,000 pounds of bite force. So when it goes like this, that's 4 tons of bite. It had eyes that were set forward, so if everyone does like this and they look forward, you have what's called binocular vision. That means part of this eye is looking this way and part of this eye is looking this way. So you have overlapping fields of vision. T-Rex had that. T-Rex also had a strong sense of smell and teeth and jaws that were adapted for crushing bone. Like I said, 4 tons of bite and very strong teeth. And we actually have evidence of Triceratops bones and duckbill bones that have been just crushed up and chunked up. And we even have fossil coprolite. Does anyone know what a coprolite is? Tell me what, put in the chat box if you know what a coprolite is. Anyone know what a coprolite is? Yeah, there you go. Poop. Fossilized poop. That's what we actually have. Fossilized poop, kind of about like this big. I know it's kind of gross, but you know, we're trying to be scientists here, right? With chunks of Triceratops bone in it. So that tells us that T-Rex was crushing up this bone and eating the bone too. These are several skulls. We have a bunch of skulls in the exhibit. These are all different Tyrannosaurus rex skulls. This is MOR 008. This is called B-Rex here. And this is MOR 555, known as the Wankel Rex. And then our big, nice to meet you, how you doing T-Rex. As soon as you walk in the hall, you're going to see Montana's T-Rex, MOR 980. 40 feet long, about a little over 12 feet at the hip, a big monster. And this was collected up near Fort Peck in Montana, Fort Peck Reservoir in what's called the Hell Creek Formation. And so we've got probably more Tyrannosaurus Rexes than any other museum that I'm aware of. And so we get a lot of researchers who come to look at these Tyrannosaurus Rexes. Are any questions about T-Rex before I move on?
We have a few really great questions.
Okay.
How can you tell a male from a female?
How can we tell a male female from a male T-Rex from a female T-Rex? Well, we're going to zoom back here. For a long time, we could not. We don't have enough specimens yet to see if there's a difference in their bones to decide if they're female versus male. But there is one specimen, which I'm circling right here. It's called B-Rex. And several years ago, a researcher had cut into those bones and saw in the hollow spaces, because these have hollow bones, meat-eating dinosaurs have hollow bones like a bird. In the hollow space, there was this weird spongy bone growth. Shouldn't be there. And she looked at it under a scope, and it looked just like the weird spongy bone that's called medullary bone that you see in birds when birds are about to lay eggs or just laid eggs. And so she found that, and what that tells us is that B-Rex was a female, and she was about to lay eggs or had just laid eggs, because birds build up that extra bone in their hollow limb bones, and then that bone gets transferred from there to their eggshell. That's how they make their eggs. And so that tells us that B-Rex was either about to lay eggs or had just laid eggs. So she's a female.
All right, we are running out of time, and I understand we haven't got to a lot of questions. They're fantastic questions. Thank you. I'd like to end it with one. Do we have dinosaurs around today?
Yes. So these types of dinosaurs, we call them non-avian dinosaurs. So the big ones walking around on the ground, we call them non-avian dinosaurs. But birds are a type of dinosaur. They share over 120 physical characteristics with dinosaur skeletons, including even how their eggshells are made. And we even have evidence of feathered dinosaurs now, lots of it. So dinosaurs and birds are basically different versions of one another. Birds are the avian version of dinosaurs.
Birds are dinosaurs. Is that what you just said?
Yep.
Got it. Thanks, Scott.
Sure.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Scott, for all that fantastic information. Scott's going to pull up one last screen to let you know what we have coming up as far as live stream events. There we go.
This is all happening next week.
So join us for Homesteading in Montana on Monday with Lisa Verwise. We'll talk about the Living History Farm. And we'll be back with dating the fossil record for next Friday's Fossil Friday with Amy, who you saw next to that giant dinosaur bone earlier. I think that's all we have for today. Anything else, Scott?
No, hope you guys enjoyed it.
Thanks again. We'll see you next week.